All right, good afternoon. We will go ahead and get started with today's program. My name is Gina Jockey, and on behalf of the Ohio State Sustainability Institute, I would like to welcome you to the 4th Annual Women in Sustainability Program. This event is a part of our Time for Change Student Programming Week, which is held during Earth Month. And each year I've had the privilege of working with an outstanding student leader to make this event a reality. For today's welcome, we would like for you to hear a few words from the creator of the first iteration of this event, which was held back in 2018. Sarah Fisher is an alumna of Ohio State and had the original vision for creating an event where students and professionals could come together and connect to discuss women and their successes and challenges in the field of sustainability. Sarah is currently an electric vehicle specialist at the Electrification Coalition, and she's joining us today from Seattle, Washington. Thank you, Sarah. It's an honor to have you here with us. I will pass it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gina. Hi, everyone, and thank you for attending. As Gina said, my name is Sarah Fisher, and I currently work as an electric vehicle specialist for a nonprofit called the Electrification Coalition. I graduated from Ohio State in 2018 from the EADS program. So in the fall of 2017, I had the opportunity to attend Green Build on a student scholarship, which is a conference hosted by the U.S. Green Building Council. Of the many events and networking opportunities that took place at that conference, the one that I really wanted to attend was the Women in Green Power Breakfast. I can't remember why I wasn't able to. It was either sold out or the tickets cost extra, but I left the conference extremely disappointed that I wouldn't be able to learn more about what it was like to be a professional woman in the sustainability field. I got back to Columbus and I couldn't stop thinking about what a great opportunity it would have been, not just to network as a soon-to-be graduate, but also to be in an environment where I felt supported and understood. So, as an extremely stubborn student, I decided that I would just make one of my own. Fortunately for me, and maybe unfortunately for her, Gina was the person who I eventually connected with. And together we planned the first ever Women in Sustainability event that took place at Ohio State during Time for Change Week 2018. At the time, I really thought it was going to be a one-time event, and I didn't know how many other people would be interested. The following year after my graduation, Gina reached out to let me know that the second annual Women in Sustainability event would be taking place, and it's gotten bigger and bigger every year. So I'm incredibly proud and excited to see what this event has continued growing into. And I think it really shows how much women can accomplish when we decide to be stubborn about something that we want. So without further ado, I want to introduce Alisa Mancini, the current stubborn woman leading the 2022 Women in Sustainability webinar. Alisa is a fourth year majoring in environmental science and minoring in environmental engineering. After graduating in May, she will be spending the summer working for the Ohio Division of Wildlife in Columbus. Alisa ultimately hopes to work in restoration, where she can work to restore degraded lands to increase wildlife habitat spaces and promote native species. And as a student in President Johnson's Pathways to Net Zero Carbon Neutrality course, she has also become interested in learning about carbon reduction methods on large university scales, but also enjoys finding ways to reduce her carbon footprint at home. Thank you, Alisa, for your hard work in leading this year's event, and I will pass it off to you to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's an honor to have you here. You're truly the person who started it all. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. And in addition to you, I'd like to thank our panelists for being here as well. We have some incredible women here. So we're going to go ahead and start our panel here. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Okay. So just before we get started, just want to go over how this is going to work. So we just ask that all of our guests have your mics muted during the panel. And if you have a question that comes up, please enter that into the chat and then towards the end, after we go through the list of questions that we have developed, we're going to get to those audience questions. And if your question is for a specific panelist, please put that in the chat as well. We have Jolene Thompson, Melanie Houston, and Jenny Adkins. So I'm going to ask the three of you if you could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your career path, how did you get into sustainability, and anything else that you would like to share with us while we kick off the event. We're going to start with Jolene.
All right, well, thank you. And what a great event. I'm really impressed the fact that this has maintained and grown, and just kudos to everyone at Ohio State and all of you for your interest. So I appreciate the invitation to participate. My name is Jolene Thompson, and I'm the president and CEO of American Municipal Power. We're a nonprofit wholesale power supplier and services provider for 134 community-owned electric utilities in 9 states. Our members serve about 650,000 customers across our footprint. We offer our members, as a wholesale power supplier, a diverse and balanced portfolio of generating options and a range of programs designed to help them serve their residential and business customers at the local level. Just a couple of local examples, just to sort of maybe orient who we are. The City of Columbus Division of Electricity is one of AMP members, as well as the Westville Electric Division. Our largest member is Cleveland Public Power, which is a division of the City of Cleveland. So my member utilities are community owned, and there are a variety of public power systems, which is what we're called across the country. In fact, in Seattle, where Sarah's speaking from, is a public power system. I graduated in the late 1980s from Otterbein, not Ohio State, sorry, with a degree in journalism, but I'm a big Ohio State fan. My first positions out of college were with Columbus Monthly Magazine, Business First newspaper. I worked in print journalism, print media for a few years before I decided I really wanted to transition more into business communications. And I started as a public relations coordinator with AMP 32 years ago. My journey at AMP has included working in our government relations division, headed that up for a number of years, then moved into management, and had the opportunity to supervise a variety of areas, including sustainability, really have enjoyed that component. Started up our energy efficiency program, worked on permitting a number of renewable generation projects, and then had the opportunity to move into my current role 2 years ago when our longtime CEO retired. I first got interested in sustainability when we first got into sustainability, because I've been here 32 years. About 2 decades ago, AMP really started to get active in that space. And this was before there were disciplines of study at the collegiate level. And early on, we were a leader in the sector and have been, and I can talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. But I have really enjoyed working in this arena. Obviously, we have some fossil in our portfolio as well, too. But again, we've had a real focus on sustainability, everything from generation projects to energy efficiency to carbon offset programs. And it's just been a delight to see what's happened in the field. So again, look forward to the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. Turn it back over.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing more about what you do at AMP. It sounds like you have a lot of incredible initiatives going on. So thank you. And we're going to move on to Melanie.
All right. Well, I will echo Jolene and just very thankful and to be a part of this program today. Really loved hearing the origin story for this event at the top of the hour, and just feel honored to be within the on the same level with women of such caliber in this program. So. Thank you. And just to share a little bit about me. So I am our interim water director for the Ohio Environmental Council. We also have our Action Fund arm as a part of our family of organizations where we do more of our kind of lobbying and lawmaker education work. But we are an organization working to secure healthy air, land, and water for all Ohioans. We have a staff of about 25 folks And really our advocacy campaigns are centering on clean water, clean energy, public lands, and democracy. And we do our work from the halls of the State House to the local level at city halls and working with local leaders to some of our work being at the federal level when we talk about especially clean water and public lands. So really, really love my work, love my colleagues. It's a very collaborative working environment. And you know, that my path to get here was really, I would say, started in high school and perhaps even earlier, as I spent a lot of time out in nature with a grandfather who was a biology teacher, planting many trees on some of our family property. And so by high school, I knew that I was sort of headed in this direction. I wasn't sure exactly that I would be in policy advocacy work, but knew that I had a really strong interest in the environment. And so I headed off to Denison University, got my degree in environmental studies, spent a little time after college doing an AmeriCorps program in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, placed with a parks advocacy organization, actually. I think that's where I sort of spurred that love of the advocacy space and really trying to set the bar for policies that would help to protect the environment. Went back to graduate school at The Ohio State University in the School of Environment and Natural Resources, earned my Master of Science, and then kind of did a little bit of exploring with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for an internship, worked for another nonprofit for a couple of years before I came to the OEC in 2011. And so I've been with our organization for close to 10 years, working in this space for about 15 years or so total. And again, just really, really love the work. And I think we have a great team at the OEC. We work, again, very collaboratively. And I think we're able to be really creative and innovative as well. That's one of the things that I love about working in this sector, that we can think big about the solutions and how we can sort of take things from the status quo to a new level of thinking outside the box. So excited to talk with you all more as a part of this conversation. And I'll put a pin in it right here. Hand it back over to you, Alisa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melanie. I love to hear how everyone gets into this field. My grandfather, he loves to garden, so I can relate to that. And my sister was an environmental major as well. So it's always really interesting to hear everyone's background stories. And then last but absolutely not least, we're moving on to Jenny.
I've used Zoom before. I can unmute myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Adkins, and thank you for including me in this event. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to work with these women and hopefully start a discussion with you. I work for Mad Scientist Associates, which is an ecological and wetland consulting firm in Westerville, Ohio, which is just northeast Columbus. And we do work around the state, occasionally out of state, but our kind of bread and butter is doing habitat restoration. So we do a lot of wetland work, some stream restoration, reforestation, invasive species management, that kind of stuff. And I have been here 10 years and I absolutely love it. And I'd love to talk to any of you about your kind of career aspirations and trying to figure out your pathways to get to where you want to be in this career field, because I certainly didn't start out college knowing where I was going to end up. I didn't even know what I was going to do in college, period. So I had a very long, winding, expensive journey to get to where I am today, but I'm really happy where I ended up. Some of my just general background, I got my bachelor's in biology from Wright State in Dayton, and I got my master's in education, thinking that I would put the things that I really enjoyed learning to use by being a teacher, and I would kind of get to share that joy with others. And I quickly learned that teaching in a classroom environment is not for me. It is not what I thought it was going to be. I was used to kind of working with college students and working with people that had already self-identified as being interested in science. And so the atmosphere was a lot different when you're working with a K-12 environment. So I thought, well, I don't really know what else to do. So I guess I'll follow through with teaching, but I'll do something for myself in the summertime. And I knew that I really liked wetlands and just being in natural spaces. And so I brought a resume to the local park district, Miami County Park District, and said, here's all the things that I'm good at. Can I work here? And they just happened to have a need for someone who was familiar with wetlands and just kind of basic botany to manage one of their wetland mitigation sites. And I said, yes, sign me up for that. And so I worked with them for about 1.5 years, just doing part-time kind of intern level work. And then I did a very brief stint with Ohio State as a research tech. So I was kind of schlepping gear all over the Virginia mountains and helping collect data on hemlock forest, what was regenerating in the forest where the hemlocks were dying. And then I worked for Five Rivers Metro Parks in the Dayton area for just, maybe 6 months or so. And then I got hired at MAD, and I've just really grown a lot in this journey, and my specializations have changed a lot as I have gotten more experience here, and just really pleased with this environment. So I'm sure there's a ton that I could talk about, but I'll save those for questions if you guys have any later.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's never a clear path. So especially being a college student, it's nice to hear how other people have some not so clear paths, but it all works out in the end. So thank you very much. All right, we will move into our panel questions. Let's see, it's one of those days where I wish I had like 10 screens, but working with one. Okay. So we're going to start things off. We have an individual personalized question for each of you, and then we'll get into the general questions. But for these directed questions, we'll go in the same order that we were just in. So start with you, Jolene. And our question for you is, as a nonprofit energy company representing municipal utilities across the Midwest, how have AMP's sustainability efforts evolved over time, and what impact does it have on AMP's strategic direction going forward?
Well, thank you. As I mentioned, we've been we've had our foot in the sustainability space for many years. Just a few quick bits of background. We developed the first utility scale wind farm in Bowling Green in the state. We had the first, one of the largest, what was the first largest utility scale solar project back in 2012, and then operate a 20 megawatt solar farm in Bowling Green now, which is one of the largest in the state. We have ownership or partial ownership of 6 very environmentally responsible run-of-the-river hydroelectric projects on the Ohio River, which provide renewable energy to our communities. We have a voluntary green pricing program. We have a really robust energy efficiency program that we do in coordination with the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, who runs a number of programs across the country. And we have a number of investments in carbon offset projects. We've partnered with the Department of Natural Resources in Ohio and the Appalachian Regional Reforestation Initiative. And we've planted more than 281,000 hardwoods within 467 acres of state park lands and mine reclamation areas as part of our carbon offset project. We also work really hard as a joint action organization, which is how I would describe AMP. Our job is to provide our members with tools and options. They make the determination at the local level about what they want their power supply portfolio to look like or what programs they want to offer. So we try to make sure we have, and we do have, I just mentioned many, we have a number of tools in this arena. We're looking at additional solar right now. And we're also working on things to support our members' efforts to sort of transition with the industry as the utility industry changes. We have a lot of work that's gone into electric vehicles, and we've worked with the Smart Electric Power Alliance nationally on some tools that allow our members to do analysis of some of the considerations with respect to where you site electric vehicle charging stations and how you deal with the issues that are the technical operational issues in the electric industry with respect to some of the new technologies that are emerging. Looking forward, the electric industry is in a period of massive transition, I think, as everyone knows, an evolution that's being driven by technology advancements. It's being driven by customer preferences and policy developments, but really, truly more so on the customer side than anything else, in my viewpoint. The industry is obviously making a lot more investments in carbon-free resources and the associated infrastructure. Does not mean we don't have challenges. We have to balance affordability and reliability with sustainability. One of the most recent challenges I will flag here that you may not have thought about is the supply chain issues that are affecting our ability to move forward with projects, because you are in years of delay in some cases for the components that you need to implement some of the renewable energy technology that we've talked about, the transmission equipment, the solar equipment, et cetera. So supply chain issues, some things you may not normally think about, affect our industry's ability to meet certain goals on a timeline. But again, taken together, the industry is being very responsive and responsible and moving in the direction. Again, we have to balance a lot of different considerations, but I think the public power sector in particular has been very at the forefront in this arena for many years. And our role, again, as AMP is to provide our members tools and information and help them navigate the changes. And this is all very much part of a strategic plan we just refreshed. Sustainability is part of our mission and our initiative. So again, everyone looking at a career in sustainability might not think of the utility sector, but I would encourage you to do so because there's so many opportunities there. And I think we can probably talk more about that as we get into the questions. But I would encourage you not to dismiss the idea of working for a utility in the future.
Absolutely. Being in the carbon neutrality class at Ohio State has opened my eyes to a lot of that. We spend a lot of time talking about power, energy, electricity, and it's incredible. A lot of the different methods these companies have to reduce their footprint and start investing more into the renewable resources. So thank you very much. It's definitely an insane network that goes into all of that. So thank you. For Melanie, our question to you, can you share some of the greatest successes that have come from your work with the Ohio Environmental Council's water advocacy programs and campaigns?
Absolutely. And also to build on what Jolene was saying, you know, some of my work is centered around water access and affordability at the OEC. We began working on that issue in 2019 in partnership with our wonderful colleagues at Alliance for the Great Lakes. You know, because if you don't have, we need safe and clean drinking water, but if you can't afford that safe and clean drinking water, then you know, we're missing a piece of the puzzle there. So really we were beginning to acknowledge at that time, and you know, there's a real movement, I think, in the water advocacy space to incorporate those issues and weaving in, of course, equity and environmental justice into that conversation as well. So we've been spending time trying to build relationships with our colleagues, our wonderful colleagues at utilities who really specialize in water quality and delivering, again, safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. So I have loved that work and the OEC moving into that space. Also, historically at the OEC, I've spent a good bit of time working on the issue of lead in drinking water. And so I will share just briefly a story that I like to talk about as a success story back from 2016, when folks may remember the lead and water crisis in Flint that was horrific and tragic in so many ways, and the fallout there, and the work that needed to come as a result of the fallout from that event. That conversation was happening at the same time in Ohio. We had a situation, was not as widespread, but in Sebring, Ohio, there was outside of Youngstown, there was a lead and water situation, and where residents had not known about a contamination, elevated levels of lead in the water for about 5 months. And so we jumped in to respond to some different media requests related to that event and to bring our expertise to bear. And over the course of about 5 months, kind of working collaboratively in conversation with Ohio EPA, and going out to the community again, briefing lawmakers at the state and the federal level as well. We put in place a bill that at the time was really leading in the country in terms of increasing notification times, increasing some of that oversight with water utilities, public water utilities in the case where, water treatment might change or a source of water might change, that there would need to be a real look at the corrosion control treatment systems. And so that was about 5 months of a really rapid issue-based campaign where we were able to get a bill passed and signed into law by the governor, I think in June, I believe it was, and the water crisis had happened and came to light in January. So that was a really rewarding and great success story. And I'll just note that we're continuing to build on that work with our advocacy around lead service line replacements. So the thought has shifted to really primary prevention, that you need to get the lead out of the system altogether. And the fact that these lines are not only toxic lines, but they're aging. It's time to update them. And we're really excited about the opportunity to put a statewide program in place, put a time frame on when we get these lead lines out, paired with the fact that we have our federal infrastructure bill, which is investing about $15 billion in lead service line replacement. So we're going to be continuing to push on that issue with our water advocacy partners. And it's just really, it's an exciting time, I think, for water infrastructure improvements in this country, related again to the federal infrastructure bill and some of the stimulus funding that's come out. So overdue, but we're really happy at the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I think being near the Great Lakes, we don't always think about water scarcity, but it started thinking about the behind the scenes, the infrastructure. It's a national issue. So it's good to know that we have people like you who are out there ensuring that we all have our clean drinking water and that we have access to this thing that we often take for granted. So thank you. Then moving on to Jenny, could you tell us about your position change with Mad Scientist from education specialist to lead botanist? What made you kind of pursue this change, and how has that changed your daily routine at Mad?
Okay, yeah. I also wanted to chime in just to say that how much I appreciate the OEC's work, and that if you're not familiar with the OEC, they do a lot of kind of formulating letters and stuff like that you can send to your legislators in support of issues. And I would never, ever do that myself if I had to. So I really appreciate that. And I encourage you guys to check that out if you're not already on their list. Just kind of speaking of standing up for things that are important to us, like clean water, that it's a really great organization. So thank you for putting that together. And to my position change, it hasn't been so much a change in position as it just depends on the hat that I wear for the day. So a little bit of history about our company to give you some perspective on why that is. Mark Dilley and Chris Dilley are husband and wife that co-own the company, and they started 24 years ago. And it kind of grew from a small consulting business, just taking on wetland delineations and organizing compliance-related work with the Ohio EPA or the Army Corps of Engineers, and doing some ecological surveys just out of their house. And then they kind of slowly grew to add an employee or two. And I actually got to meet those original employees when I was working for the Park District. And I didn't even tell that part of the story when I was working for Miami County in that wetland that they wanted me to manage all the invasive species in. It turns out that wetland was built by Mad Scientist Associates. And I had never even heard of wetland consulting prior to that. And my boss at the time said, you should really tag along with these guys today. I think you should learn a lot about what they do. And I've been very grateful for that suggestion, because I tailed them around the site and said, hey, here's what I've been noticing over here, and look at this unusual plant, and just trying to show my familiarity with the site and just engage with them. And it turned into a really good networking opportunity that turned into a career. So that's how I got connected with them after my jobs with the park systems. And they had recently moved into a new office space, and I was replacing someone that was leaving to be a stay-at-home dad. And I was one of 2 employees at the time. And so anything that we did, we all did together. So whether I was coming in at entry level or not, I was kind of tagging along with the, chief scientist of the company. So I learned a lot throughout that process. And one of the reasons why I was hired instead of other candidates was because of that education background, which wouldn't necessarily be tied to like a career in science traditionally, but public education and just kind of engaging with the community was really important to MAD's mission. And they wanted me to be able to connect with schools and with the community and with teachers generally, and see if we can make that part of our business so that we can have that outreach, but also stay in business, if you will. So that was kind of one of the facets to my job. And I still do a lot of that today. So anything that we do, I tend to like kind of organize and lead those events. And a lot of our staff members assist with those as well. And in the summertime, we get to engage our interns with the community programs and things like that too. And that also includes some volunteer management. So if we ever have a publicly funded project, like a wetland that we're building at a park system or something, we try to include the community in that so that they can have a sense of stewardship and understanding like how that wetland system came to be and how it operates and why we chose the plants we did and where they go. And hopefully they can kind of enjoy watching that system grow and develop over time. So that's kind of the nutshell of what I do with the education. And then something else that, well, everyone at MAD, when you get hired here, because we're still a small company, we only have 10 full-time staff members and 1 part-time right now. You get to play to your strengths. So if there's something that interests you that you're proficient at, those skills tend to be fostered here so that you can really grow and develop those skills and become an asset to the company in that way. And one of the things that I was just kind of naturally interested in was plants. And so I got to hone my skills doing wetland delineations. And then I kind of graduated to doing more detailed floristic surveys and just becoming more and more familiar with Ohio's flora. So I've done surveys all over the state and done some threatened and endangered species work and kind of categorizational studies to help categorize a wetland to say it's this quality or this quality based on the communities that we're finding. And I also get to apply that knowledge of Ohio's habitats to the wetland systems that we create so that we're creating appropriate vegetative communities for that area in Ohio where they're located. So, so I kind of wear 2 major hats where I do environmental education as well as botanical work. And then one of my more and more major roles is doing the marketing. So I get to produce like ad work and curate our social media pages. And I'm trying my hand at the website. So if any of you visit our website and you're like, these links don't work or anything like that, it's because I'm working on it. But it's a slow but steady process. So yeah.
Thank you. Sounds you definitely have a good mix, a lot of everything going on, and love the education and outreach combined with the restoration and consulting. It's definitely rewarding when you can share that passion with people and also go out in the field and put your skills to use. So that's awesome. Well, thank you all very much for your responses to those questions. We're going to move on to some more. And with these, whoever wants to start us off, feel free, and then can all jump in whatever order you would like. So Our next question for all of you is, what is the greatest challenge that you face being a woman in the sustainability field? And are they similar to other gender challenges, or are they unique challenges within this specific field?
We're all looking for someone to go. I'll jump in. I would say that I don't know that I've ever found, and this may be a statement you'll be surprised by, I don't know that I've ever found it being particularly challenging to be a woman in the sustainability or utility space. I have always had the same opportunities that my male coworkers have had, and perhaps that's because I'm in the public power arena, a little more progressive on certain things, but I have not found it to be a hindrance at all. And I offer, when I'm talking to folks today about what you're doing in your career, I offer the same advice to men and women. And that is to show up every day, raise your hand and volunteer for stretch opportunities, find a good mentor, critically important to find a good mentor, be a good listener, do your homework, and be engaged. Same advice, male or female. And we're really blessed at AMP. We have my executive team, we have half the team is women. So really, I guess I've not experienced that challenge. I have talked to others in the utility field who have, but I've been fortunate.
I have to echo, sorry. I would echo that sentiment that it hasn't seemed like a hindrance at all to me personally. And at MAD, we are a women-owned business, and we have almost an even mix of male and female here. So everyone's incredibly capable. And aside from, like, you know, the kind of annoying comment of a client of ours going, "Oh, wow, you can do that," or "Gosh, you can carry heavy things," or just something to that regard. I have not ever really felt discriminated against or found it particularly challenging, except in the line of field gear. If you are a female or a woman and you need to buy waders or muck boots or clothes that you can wear while you're pregnant in the field, it is incredibly hard to come by, and the sizes are a lot smaller and they're just not available. And so that's been really obnoxious, but something that would be worth bringing up with companies that try to market to outdoor folks. So.
That's really interesting, Jenny. I appreciate you sharing that story as a mom of 2 young kiddos. Yeah, there's some work that needs to be done there. It sounds like I've had a similar experience. And I think, you know, what I'm hearing maybe among us is that there's good representation by women in our sectors, like our particular offices and sectors that we're working in, which, you know, could be different, like in engineering or environmental engineering, for example. But at the OEC, we've always had really good gender parity in terms of our mix of staff. We've also had very strong, in terms of leadership, we've had women in leadership. Our previous executive director is a woman. We're in a transition period right now, actually, where we're undertaking our ED search for the next couple of months. But our current interim director is a woman, very good number of managing directors who are women. So I think just, you know, my general advice for women who are starting out in their careers, similar to what Jolene had said about take stretch opportunities. I think something that we know from the research is that in applying for jobs, and I think this may be true for promotions and opportunities as well, that women can tend to want to have more experience. And, you know, again, this is a generalization, but then men can be more comfortable perhaps going with less experience, right? And I think there's some research and studies about that, but that's not true for everyone, right? Speaking for myself, I know I know about myself from going through some different leadership trainings that I feel more comfortable when I have a strong set of experiences in doing something and I have to kind of push myself to be in that learning space. And that has been helpful for me as I think about my growth into, leadership in my organization, and also in my community as I wear a part-time city council member hat. So yes, to stretch goals and thinking about, can I do this thing? I might not have the experience, but can I do it? And will I think most of the time you can. When you don't know, you ask questions and you find a circle of advisors and supporters, someone who's done it before, and you can figure a lot of these things out as you go along. So that would be some advice, if I may give that for young women starting out.
Thank you. It's great to hear that no one has had any disadvantages in being a woman. We don't, asking that question, we don't wish for any challenges. So it's great to hear that. And just had a conversation not too long ago about the waiters situation. You want to buy a pair of waiters? Well, they're going to be like hot pink or something, which isn't exactly what you want to wear in the field. And but definitely you all gave some great advice, and finding a good mentor, and however that experience aspect influences you, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. I've seen job descriptions and I am turned away from even applying. Like, I take it off the list before I even try, just because I don't have the experience. And I think that's something worth discussing, where that doesn't always have to be a barrier. So thank you for pointing that out. I especially appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of us do on here as we get ready to apply for jobs and look for a career. So thank you all. Let's see. Our next question. So we often think about sustainability as having three different pillars: the environment, society, and the economy. So could you each explain how your specific role applies to those three pillars?
I can start. So the environment, economy, and community.
People, planet, profit, however, whatever we know it as, whatever works for you.
Sure. Gosh, where to start with that? Our firm is specifically invested in the environment, and what we try to do. Some people have a not great view of consultants in the private sector because we are for profit, and because we do work with people that need to make impacts to the land that can be negative. But something that our firm tries to do is help every client, no matter who they are, if they're trying to restore something or if they're trying to put a building on top of a wetland, let's say, is to help them make the best decisions, like wise land use decisions is what we call it. So if we can work with someone who might need to make some impacts to a surface water feature, be it a stream or a wetland, we always do an appropriate survey and say, here's the resources that you have, and these are the things that are regulated that you are going to have to pay for to impact. And really, you don't want to put your building here. So why don't you move your whole system this way or that way, or consider a different property, and you could save money. You can, it can be good PR. It can be, if they're just intrinsically interested in the environment, it can be good for them in that regard as well. So we're always trying to steer them to make what makes the most practical sense. But a huge part of what we do and the work that we actually chase is to do restorative work. And so that brings us work from conservation agencies and like the Nature Conservancy. We do some other land conservation work around the state. And if they can get grant funds to do land restoration, then we always try to jump on board with that so that we can make it the most appropriate, effective, useful system for that area. So we also have a lot of specialists on our staff that view restoration through different lenses. So I'm a plant person, so I like to think of surveying plant communities and trying to replicate the most appropriate plant community. And we've got a herpetologist on staff who might say, well, gosh, there's spotted turtle habitat nearby. Why don't we create something that's very specific to that so that we can sustain those populations? And we've got macroinvertebrates. We've got all kinds of like fun people here that add a lot of good information to how we go about restoration practices. And all of that to say, because we're a private consulting business, we do have to pay our own bills and things like that. So we're working with people who can afford those services. And we try to make the case that we are a valuable service that you should want to pay for. Because a lot of the work that we do, I don't want to say is undermined, but it's kind of like one of the last things that people think about, especially if they're doing something because they have to. So they might be paying a construction crew or a geologic survey or something like that. They might be putting a lot of their funds into that, and then the environmental consultants kind of come in last, and they don't make as much as a lot of the other people do. So we want to make sure that people know our worth and how it translates to value for them as well. And touching on the community piece for sustainability, as I already mentioned, education is really important to personally me, but also our firm. And we try to make those connections with people to engage with the things that we're passionate about wherever we can. So whether that's meeting someone, like if we're working in a park and someone stops and says, hey, what are you doing in there? We try to, give them digestible information for what we're working on and why. And, if a kid walks by, we want to show them, hey, did you see this really neat plant over here? Or gosh, did you see all these tadpoles? And trying to get them to engage with nature in any way possible so that they care about it and that they feel comfortable in that environment as well. And I think that all of us recognize that while we kind of started young and green here and are growing up in the system, that we have to pass along that torch to someone else too, eventually. So we want to start building those skills in other people so that they can be the next generation of people that care about what we do. So I hope that answered the questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we might move on to a different question, just so I know we have some students on here, just so we can maybe get some advice out to them before we hit 1 o'clock here. But what skills do you all look for when you're hiring young sustainability professionals? And what advice would you have for them going into looking for that first position?
I can name something that is top of mind. Is we recently have hired a water fellow at the OEC, and also looking to hire our summer interns. I'll note for those, it would be helpful for those listening in too, that each year we have a cohort of summer interns, and I have been fortunate to be able to help work on that program a little bit. I would say, professionalized it in the sense of having kind of a cohort model, some really good onboarding, some kind of group programs that you go through as you go throughout the experience, so that you get some mentorship and get to talk to people in the field. And then also that we have shifted to a paid internship model. And for our fellows, this is a newer intentional kind of set of positions that we've created at the OEC to try to bring in folks in who are starting out in their careers at an entry-level position, for lack of a better way to say that. So I think for both of those sets of folks at the OEC, really looking for self-starters. I mean, people that obviously have a passion and an interest, but also can take you know, the idea or the project that's a part of our advocacy or policy campaign, take that and sort of run with it. Of course, we want to provide support and coaching, but I think we try not to do a lot of hand-holding, because we don't want to micromanage, but also we want people to be able to build upon their skills and their interests, as Jenny noted earlier. So really that kind of self-starter personality, and person who can just kind of launch, right? Have that grounding of onboarding, and then launch into the work from there, because our office is a pretty fast-paced environment as we work on timely issues and have to be responsive to things that come up. So
if I could jump in, and that's great, Melanie. I know I've run across folks throughout my career that have interned or worked at OEC, and they've all been very high caliber. So you guys do a nice job there. I would just add to that, Selfstarter is important, but from our standpoint, we have a team of a couple of full-time professionals in sustainability on our staff, and then we always have an open internship. It's a paid internship year-round, environmental and sustainability. So you get to work in one foot in both camps. One thing I would stress is I don't feel like folks should limit themselves based on their degree. I have a degree in journalism. This was not the path, I think, to an earlier comment someone made, that I would have been, talking to my parents and my advisors in high school, that I would have contemplated, or in college. So from my standpoint, we aren't looking for someone that has to fit into a mold of they have to be a scientist or they have to be an engineering major. They could be an economics major. Someone who has a passion, who's enthusiastic, who has an energy level, and really wants to make a difference. So just don't limit yourself. If your degree's in public relations, that can fit into this arena as well too.
I really appreciate that too, Jolene, that I started off not knowing. Actually, you know what? I started off as a fine arts major. And so I really took a weird path to get to where I am. But I agree. You kind of learn what you're capable of doing and what you're passionate about wanting to do as a career versus a hobby. And I feel like that's an expensive but good time to sort that out in college. As far as our company, and if you were looking to have a career with us, we typically hire with bachelor's or master's degrees. We do have a PhD on staff, and we've had some previously. And we typically draw from people with ecological and biological backgrounds. It doesn't have to specifically be in wetlands. That's one of those things where if you're competent enough to get through one of those programs, you kind of have the similar interest system, and then we can build upon that as you go along. But I did want to mention that something that we've seen a lot of work in recently, or a lot of investments being made in, is invasive species management. So where that may have been taken on by like a park district in-house or a government organization, they are hiring a lot of that work out. And it's not something that we were really started out thinking this is going to be a major part of what Mad Scientist does. But it's, it's hard work, but it's really good, meaningful conservation work too. It's so necessary. And so we have a team of technicians and conservation practitioners. That's one of their primary roles, is just, bidding on these large sites, and they go and they cut honeysuckle for 2 days a week, 2 weeks kind of a thing. And they get to make management plans for how they're best going to tackle those things and, maintain their equipment. There's a lot of work that goes into it. But the point of bringing this up is that that's not something that we are needing someone to have a higher level degree in. So if the passion is there and you have the ability to, distinguish between plants, and you are, interested in doing that, then that could be an associate's degree, or it could be someone right out of high school. It doesn't typically need much more than that. So I think that that's going to be a new opportunity that is going to be new to us, and also to the kind of field of sustainability in an ecological sense.
think that was very helpful. And again, being college students, any piece of advice like that is always useful, and we always appreciate it. So thank you all very much. We're going to move on to have a fun little lightning round type question. So just like quick, if you had to pick a podcast, a book, documentary, anything like that, that would help someone who is interested in either learning more about sustainability or gender equity, what would be that podcast, book, documentary, etc.?
She did break up. And her question was podcast or book we would recommend.
Yeah, here I'll put it in the chat. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll also repeat it.
Okay.
Do you have a recommendation for like as a book, a podcast, a documentary, anything like that that would help someone get into sustainability or learn more about gender equity?
I don't have a recommendation, I would say, that's specifically in that thread, but I listen to a lot of podcasts because I like them and I drive a lot. I have a long commute, which isn't very sustainable, but I feel like I'm doing good work. But I've recently been listening to is it Oology's podcast? They have a lot of good scientific information on there, and it's kind of a fun way to just get some more information in your brain. I also really enjoy the In Defense of Plants podcast. They interview a lot of people in the field, so you get a lot of more kind of hard-hitting scientific information on that. And it's not a book or podcast, but another very accessible way to gain information I would suggest is just looking at organizations that you're interested in working for, like kind of Google the job that you want to have and see if there's anybody local that comes up with that keyword, and email someone there or call them and say, hey, can I come into your office? I just want to chat about what you do, or can I take you out to lunch, or anything like that. And I think that that will help you in many ways, just in building a networking system. But you get a feel for the culture of the workplace that you might be applying to. You can see the actual environment that you might be working in. And so I think in college, you are envisioning a lot of what your life is going to be like outside of that. And a lot of times that is not accurate, I don't think. So, you might be thinking you'll be doing work in a forest all the time, but really a lot of your work is being done in a cubicle, and you get to go visit sites every, couple weeks or something like that. So just better understanding what the job you might think you want really entails is going to go a long way. And I think that, I ended up with internships by doing that, just showing up and saying, can we talk about what you do and how do I get a job in this field and things like that. So I think that that's kind of invaluable connections that you can make in your early career.
I would echo the power of the informational interview and asking people that you know for just a little bit of time. Be really gracious about, that you are asking for their time. I think most people will give you some, but be really gracious about it and make sure to show up on time and thank them for their time, and then ask them maybe who else you should talk to learn more about this field or this other connected field. I recall a time where I planned a trip to Washington, D.C. because I was sort of exploring the opportunity of maybe moving there. It's a great place to start out a career if you're interested at all in policy, in any niche of environmental policy. Those opportunities to work on the Hill are phenomenal for what you learn and for the connections. I didn't start out there, but same thing could be said for working at the State House in a legislative office. You get some real understanding of the way that the sausage is made from a really early point in your career that I think is just, and a lot of connections that can serve you well for a long time. So my trip though, I think I met with some folks at the US EPA whom I was able to be connected with to understand a little bit more about some of the job opportunities. Pew Charitable Trust was a meeting that I had. And then there may have been just a couple others, but I learned a lot through the trip about, what some opportunities could be if I were willing to move there. And didn't end up making that choice, but that was really helpful. And then podcasts, real quick, I am a big podcast consumer. And the first things that came to mind were some of my different parenting podcasts, but because negotiation for salary was one of the questions earlier in the thread, there is a podcast, I'll put it in the chat too, called Negotiate Anything, which I really like. It's a Columbus-based JD who started this firm, and he's just really flourishing. So he's actually got a training as well that I'm interested in taking, but he has this podcast. And then there's an associated one that's more geared for women professionals called Ask with Confidence. And I would highly recommend those. And then I'll put a water related movie documentary in the chat as well for folks to check out.
Thank you so much, Jolene. Thank you for your comments in the chat. I copied and pasted those so I can go back to that resource you put in there. So thank you all very much. So unfortunately, we are at the point where we do have to move into our breakout rooms. This time has flown by faster than I ever thought it would, but I just want to say a big thank you to the Sustainability Institute for allowing me to be a part of this and for allowing this event to continue on years after Sarah first came up with the idea. And a huge thank you to you three, our panelists, Jolene, Melanie, and Jenny. You have all been incredible, and you've given us amazing advice, and it was really an honor to be able to sit here and hear about your different careers and how you got to where you are. So I think I speak for everybody in here. Thank you so much for your time. We've really appreciated it.